Bon dimanche tout le monde, c'est moi Deanne. Hello everybody, happy Sunday. So happy to be here with you for Heart Sundays. And I have an amazing guest with me, the wonderful singer-songwriter Anthony Burbidge. Woo!
Hello.
So before we get into chats with Anthony, I just want to just touch base with everyone to let you know that it's 5 o'clock somewhere is happening next week, Paris time. So that means a 9 a.m. Mountain Standard Time, 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, and 8 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. So if you want to get up early and work while we serenade you, that's awesome. So please join and stay tuned on my Facebook page. Anyway, welcome, Anthony. I am so excited to have you because, as you all know, Anthony wrote the beautiful song 99 Steps that I just released the YouTube premiere. Thoughts on the video, Anthony?
I liked it. Yeah, it's beautiful. It's very tasteful, actually. It
Yeah.
um, it's interesting, like doing a lyric video. Sometimes people are are trying to interpret the lyrics with the images, and then sometimes it becomes kind of too hokey. Like it's you know the literal interpretation of he's singing about an orange, and now there's an orange on the screen, right? And and I what I liked about the video was that it was more impressionistic, and it gave me time to listen to the song and to contemplate it. So yeah,
Did you
I thought
feel
it was great.
breath and space?
Exactly, yeah. Which is also what you did with the song in terms of the way you sang it and arranged it. So it was nice to see that the video wasn't cluttered.
Yeah, I think that's, Neil Hunt, a buddy of mine. He's the one that did this video. So love you, Neil. Thank you for all your hard work with that. And yeah, exactly about breath and space and letting the music just soar. Because that's, it's been such a big hit all over the world, 99 Steps, your song that you wrote. And it's been incredible just to see how it's touched people's hearts and given them, lots of hope. So I want to know so you and I met years ago as I was sitting at Unity, like sobbing my eyeballs out because I was just recently going through separation, and then you sang this song, and I was like, oh my God, like the tears were like, and then in my mind, and then I came back another time and you sang it again, and I was like, I wrote on my phone, I was like, okay, this song is a thing. I need to sing this song. Like it's been a process. So
Yeah, thanks.
since 2016. So when did you actually write 99 Steps?
Well, that's a good question. I'd have to go back and look at the actual. I should have done that before we got on.
Okay.
It's a few years ago now. I can't remember the exact year. The last decade has flown by, so it could be 2 years ago. It could be 8 years ago. I'm not sure, but I can look it up if you want. I'm
Well,
kind of curious how. So you never told me that before. I knew that after you heard us perform the song that you had been taken with it, but I didn't know like what did the song mean to you? Like,
so yeah, so in that point of my life, like it gave me hope, and I realized that I wasn't alone. And that even if I only have like a step, somebody else, universe, spirit, a friend has me. Like, I kind of envision, the famous, infamous footprints poem where they see the two sets of footprints, and then when there's only one set, they're like,
right,
what happened? And it was like, well, that was when I was carrying you. Like, I totally
right,
see that sometimes for me, like I can't do it all by myself. I need support, and knowing that I have it, or that there's something else supporting me in my life when I need it the most. Like it was just at the time, like I just resonate. I mean, it's such a beautiful song. I mean, everyone's like loving it. So that's yeah. I just for me as a musician, when I feel something, it resonating with my body, it's like my intuition goes ding ding ding. Like this is
right. You
this
know.
right? So it went from 2016 to hearing it at Unity for the first time to probably like, I can't remember, probably maybe 6 months later, again, hearing at Unity, going, oh my gosh, this is a thing, to 6 months later, me coming up to you finally and being like, so can I record your song? To then like 6 months later, finally getting the chord chart, to then, like it's been this
Right.
progression to then going into my buddy's studio and like laying it down in 2 hours.
Oh wow.
Like it was just like I went into the studio one time and that was it. And then it sat in the vault, and I would listen to the demo and I would like move myself. Like that's weird. Like I don't like listening to myself normally, but I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm crying to myself. Like this song is so amazing. I just love it. And then I realized that this was the year to release it, because I feel that the world needs a little hope and love, and to let people know that they're never alone. So that it's been this crazy process. And so the power of music and the power of your songs, it was just you and piano.
Oh, was it? Oh, I thought it was with the band. Oh,
First,
okay.
yeah, I'm pretty sure it was just you and piano. I mean, you probably played it with the band, but there's such an intimacy when you were just you, your soul, sharing your soul up there with all of us. Like you really truly are. I mean, you're an award-winning singer-songwriter as well, which is amazing. But what was it that inspired 99 Steps for you?
Well, it's interesting because I don't remember the exact moment. Sometimes I remember the moment that a song came. Um, I know with that song, the inspiration for the actual line 99 Steps. So that goes back to, um, so years ago, I somehow connected with um, this guru from India. And when this guru came um, to Calgary to speak and see people, I remember going and I don't know if it was the first time I met him or later, but one of the first things was um, that he said to me was this phrase, something to the effect of um, "Don't be scared or don't be nervous. Um, you just have to take one step, and God will take 99 steps to you." And yeah, so and it was this whole thing where like the guru was in a special room and everybody was waiting outside and people were coming out and they were like swearing they had had miracles performed and everything. And at the time I was just like this young guy. I had gone through a whole journey in my 20s of health crisis that eventually I took every vitamin and every herb that I could find, and nothing was working on a physical level. And then eventually the emotional and spiritual aspect of my life had to come into play, and I had to address that. So I was in this stage, a strange stage where, I was in my 20s, maybe, yeah, like mostly in my 20s. I'm going to say early 30s, but even by then I was starting to move into a different phase. So you picture here I am in my 20s, um, and I would go to these spiritual retreats or yoga classes or whatever. It was just me, this like dorky, shaved head, 20 something year old guy, and all these middle aged women. Because I was totally a fish out of water. That that at that time it was like, if you think back to the 90s, it was like Oprah was going through her awakening, and the West was learning about things like yoga, and Rodney Yee was on television. People were like, yoga, what's that, right? And I was going through this whole thing, yeah, learning about meditation and learning about how the brain works and interacts with meditation and all these things that I was going through at the time. But I was on my own little sort of path, and so somehow at some point through a friend of mine, I ended up going to this event where this guru had come all the way from India, and and yeah, so I was as a 20 something, I was very like the energy was really heightened because I was quite nervous. You know, there was another young guy had come out before that, and he had this little gold sort of I want to say trinket, but this little gold thing, and the guru, you know, was dressed like in Indian garb and had no sleeves. And when this young guy went in, um, the guru said to him, "Hold out your hand," and with no sleeves, went like this, and then produced this thing out of thin air in his hand. So he came out, and people were just clamoring around him and like, what? Like like you can just see the guy's like his mind is blown. He's like, what just happened? Like, so here I am. I'm sort of, this, dorky 20-something-year-old, like on my own little spiritual journey, waiting to go in to see this guru. And, they say, okay, it's your turn. And, the door opens and they had this room. It was all cleared out in this person's house. It was empty. And they had a kind of seating or whatever set up. So the guru was sitting on the floor, just above the floor, and very little in the room. There was an attendant there with him and so on. And so I kind of walked in and I'm kind of like did a little bow or like, I don't know what to do, right? And that's when this line, don't be afraid. Just take one step and God will take 99 steps towards you, to you. And so anyway, so that was that experience. And then later on, years later, a friend said the same thing, had said to me at some point, I was, I think, like we as people, the gift of being human that separates us, as far as we know at this point, from other animals is that we can perceive into the future. And that's why we've been so successful as a species, is that we can envision into the future. And if I were to grow wheat and I were to save wheat, then maybe I would make it through the winter. And so, that kind of thing, right? This is the birth of civilization and culture. And so that's a blessing and an amazing accomplishment for the human brain to be able to do that. But it's also a real Achilles heel, because I can project into the future and start worrying and stressing and obsessing about what might be or what might not be and so on. So at some point I was in that space, and this friend of mine who's a mentor, he said to me again, he said, well, remember what the guru said. You don't have to worry about all that stuff. You just have to take the next step. You take one step and the divine will take 99 steps towards you. And that takes so much pressure off me as a person. And God knows I have to remember that again today as I did yesterday or a year ago or 10 years ago. But
I hear you on that, definitely. And I think like even when you say that line, I just get like all warm and fuzzy, and I'm a spiritual person, of course, and there's lots of people that, they're searching for their spirituality or they haven't found it. But for me, what I love about this song is that it's for everyone's interpretation, right? So
right.
you're a spiritual person, you may think of it as God, or if you're, whatever you're the universe or your bestie, your parents. Like I think that's it. It's like, for me, don't be scared. Just take the next step, because you've got people to support you, or you've got a community, or you've got God, or whatever you resonate. And that's what I love about the song, because it resonates on a bigger scale, right? So it can totally resonate with the spiritual community or not. And that's what I love about it. And I just know for me, like, it was just it saved my soul. It really did save my soul. So thank you for writing it and singing it. And, a big shout out to Unity of Calgary, because I love that place. Like, I wish I could be there more often, obviously, but what a beautiful community. And I love the band, and I just love the vibe. And it was my Sunday home for a long time. And it was a place. I remember someone asked me, oh, would you like to get up and sing? Because I had sung at Unity years ago. And I was like, no, I just need to be Molly member. I just need to sit in the chair and take all the things in and cry if I need to and laugh or whatever. And it was so healing. at that time in my life. And again, music is love. That's I shared a quote on my Instagram about that. Love is a feeling, and music is love. So again, I can't say enough to you, the amazing songwriter that you are. And I want to do another one. So we're gonna have to talk. I'm gonna have to, I'm all about supporting, my fellow Calgarian songwriters. And just quickly, like, I'm a songwriter as well. But I mean, I am a songwriter. I am. I have written some great songs. Yes. Okay, I'm owning that. But what would be, some tips for songwriters? Because I know for me sometimes, like, I go to sit down, like, sometimes I'm just like, okay, I can't just sit and write a song. I kind of wait for the download, but at the same time, I'm supposed to practice songwriting. And like, what's your process? Is it more of like download and then just blah? Or do you have like a ritual that you do?
A ritual.
Or like, I don't know, do you do morning pages through the artist's
Yep.
way, or do you hop on?
So
Yeah.
yeah, so to answer that question, essentially, like when I was younger, when I was in university doing my music degree, so I was doing a classical music degree, but then on the side, and this is pre-internet, I was ordering all these books on songwriting and, you know, um, the music business and all this stuff that had nothing to do with the classical music, the playing in the orchestra and all that stuff, right? But I was seeing myself at that time as a songwriter and trying to learn as much as I could about it. And my early songwriting was, the early stuff in my teen years. A lot of that just sucked, right?
Teenage angst.
Um, and usually we have to be bad we have to allow ourselves to be bad at something before we can be great at it, right? So I went through that phase. Then in university, then I started getting more serious about understanding how do songs work and not just shooting from the hip. And there was one book in particular. I think she's passed now. She was the songwriting professor at Berkeley. Sheila Davis, I want to say her name is. And the book was called The Craft of Lyric Writing. And so I can remember one summer I was working in dinner theater as an actor and singer and musician. And this is in Nova Scotia. I was in Lunenburg, Nova Scotia, at the dinner theater there. The Lunenburg, the home of the Blue Nose ship, the fastest ship in the world, and all that stuff. That's on the Canadian dime, right? Or at least it used to be. I don't know if they changed the dime.
Oh no, it's still there.
It's not there yet. So my mom is from there, and my grandmother at the time, my grandfather had passed, and she was living on her own, and so I stayed with her, and it was like I was this university kid, and I would get up in the morning, I would sleep in, and my grandmother, like God bless her, she was just like, here's your breakfast, Sonny. Like she was just like she was so happy to have her grandson there, and so I would kind of get up late, do my thing, have breakfast, get ready, and then I would spend the afternoon in it was this house that my grandfather built with his own two hands. He hand planed the what do you call it, baseboards in the house, and everything was built from scratch, right? And it was one of those old kind of post Second World War houses that it's one level, but then they didn't really have an attic. So you could go up the stairs and you could duck down, and there was like a second sort of level, but it was peaked. So I had a little room up there that was my uncle's room before he left, before he grew up. And then there was a separate room on the other side. And I would go in a separate room and close the door. And I would sit there with my guitar, and I went through that book systematically, and I wrote a folk song, a rock song, an AAAB song, and whatever. Like I was just basically using, the what I learned from the book in terms of songwriting structure and lyric structure and so on, and I would just write these songs. Some of them were good, some of them were not great, and so on. But I went through the craft of songwriting at that point. So then, those songs eventually turned into an album, and that was like 1993. And went through this whole thing. Back then, nobody made their own CDs, right? And it was this whole weird thing. And so went through the whole process of writing and recording all that stuff, releasing it, being, on the radio, TV and stuff, not being famous or anything, but just getting it out there, right? And then the following year after I graduated from university, I went home to my parents' house, and they had moved from the farm where I grew up. They sold the farm and downsized, and this new house didn't have a home, didn't have a room in it for me, and so I ended up building a little room in the basement. And unbeknownst to me, this house had some kind of toxic mold in it, and the toxic mold made me very sick. And I ended up, as a singer, I was encountering a lot of pain when I was trying to sing. And I thought, oh, it must be this new vocal method. I was doing the Seth Riggs vocal method, Seth Riggs, who taught Michael Jackson and so on. And I had ordered these cassette tapes from California, and I was doing so I was like, okay, I gotta stop this. I must be doing the method wrong. And, but the pain didn't go away. Eventually I took a month off from speaking. Eventually I left the house and so on. And what happened was this started my journey into my health crisis. And that's how I moved to Calgary, was to leave the damp climate of the East Coast, come where it's dry. And it took a year of going to see doctors, and eventually found one doctor who said, this I think is what's going on, and you need to leave. He said move to the desert, but there's not too many deserts in Canada.
Right.
So when I moved here in 1994, in my mind, the doctor had said, I said, I'm a musician. Like, how long is this going to take? Right? He said, well, take the medication I told you, the homeopathics, follow the diet, leave this climate. Probably 6 months to a year, you'll bounce back. So I came to Calgary, sold all my, my guitar, I had a little portable recording studio at the time, and everything that I had, my microphone, everything. Bought a one-way plane ticket to Calgary, and I got a job waiting tables. And I thought, it's going to be 6 months to a year. I've been doing music nonstop for over a decade now, and I'll just take a little break, right? I'll just take a little break. And that year became 10 years. And during that time, I wasn't writing, I wasn't performing, I wasn't doing any music at all. I ended up working in a record store, selling other people's music and other people's dreams, right? And that helped me a lot in terms of being a producer, because I listened to over 10,000 albums in those years. So I just got to hear it all. But as a musician and as a songwriter, it was a very, very dark time because I wasn't performing. But what was happening was, eventually that health crisis led into a spiritual awakening. And through the spiritual awakening, and this is a long way around to your question. What happened was, I was meditating on a daily basis, partly just to relieve the pain in my body, because I was going through fibromyalgia type pain, universal pain in my body. And that hour a day of meditation, everything kind of calmed down, and I could relax the muscles and so on. And eventually, meditation, one thing led to the next. And this friend of mine who's a doctor and a mentor to me, he had told me about this woman who is a research scientist named Anna Weiss. And she's passed away since, but she and her research team spent decades studying human brainwaves. And at the time, back in the 90s, most people hadn't heard about this. More people know about it now, but they would use these fMRI and EEG machines and so on to measure brain waves while people were doing different things, like solving math problems or doing the dishes or meditating or whatever, right? So what happened, and I only figured this out in retrospect, but what happened was, so really quickly, you've got, when you're in your alert state, you've got your beta brainwave state, right? That's when you're doing your taxes and you're being in your Deanne business, right? Mode, right?
I'm in my beta waves. All right.
Yeah, so that's beta, predominantly beta waves, right? If you're driving across town to a job or a friend's place and you're half zoned out, or you're sitting in class and you're that's alpha, right? Where you're kind of in the daydreaming state and you can't figure out, like, how did I get here? I know I got in the car and I drove across town, right? Then below that is theta, and theta is the state that's just more associated with creativity, and it's the twilight state where you're starting to fall asleep or you're waking up. And this is why numerous cases of famous writers and people throughout history who would keep a notebook by their bed, and they would, as they woke up, they would quickly grab it, or as they were falling asleep, they would grab it, and they would come up with these amazing ideas that their conscious mind, their regular beta mind, wouldn't come up with.
I've
And then
done that.
below that is delta. What's that?
I've done that where like I've literally woken myself up from a dream because I'm like,
Yeah.
I'm writing a really awesome song. I'm like, I was started singing it and my man's like, what are you doing? Because I was literally like, 4 o'clock in the morning, be like, la la la. He's just like, what are you doing? I'm like, I'm recording a song. He's like, oh.
Yes. Yeah, and there's lots of examples. Like everybody from Paul McCartney on through have talked about having waking up or having dreams or trying to capture it quickly. And so yeah, and then the last state, the other state is the delta state, which is when you're in deep sleep. And my friend describes that as that's when like the you're not dreaming anymore. The conscious unconscious mind is all shut down, and you're at one with the universe. So the brain is controlling, heart rate and all that kind of stuff, but you're gone. You've returned to the source, right? That's the kind of idea, right? So what happened was, so Anna Weiss wrote this book. It's called The High Performance Mind, and they released a series of CDs where there's this kind of bed of music, not really any melody, very subtle music, and they injected these alpha waves, theta waves, and so on. And there were four CDs in this set. And because I managed a record store, as soon as my friend told me about this, I started hunting in the import catalogs and ordered this in. And I would do these meditation CDs every day. I would have my little Discman, and I would lay down on my bed and listen to these. And it wasn't until years later when I was teaching songwriting that I realized that something happened to me during those years of meditation that shifted my state. So you said earlier about downloading, so I don't think that I don't consider myself to be like a songwriter as much as a what's the word I'm looking for? Who's the person in the courtroom, the person who does the
Stenographer?
yeah, stenography or dictation or whatever, like someone who is just who's they're not creating it. They're just like the
They're just,
conduit who's interpreting it.
yeah.
Yeah, so that's my experience now. Before the lost decade, when I was writing from ego. That was me writing the songs, right? Now, and it has something to do with this shifted brainwave state. And I don't know how I do it. I'm not sure how it happens, but somehow I think my state of consciousness shifts, and then the song comes very quickly. Like if I'm at it for more than an hour, if it's more than an hour working on a song, I know it's me. I know it's me doing it, and I'm getting in the way of whatever is trying to be written, right? And yeah, so and I figured that out. I only figured it out by accident because I teach music. Years ago, I had a student, and I taught her singing and taught her guitar, and then she was getting more and more advanced, and she was going and doing competitions and winning contests and all this stuff. And so the next step for her was, as an artist to develop, was let's explore songwriting. I can remember like the creative block. Like I'm like, this girl is like so creative. I've been working with her for several years, and she's amazing. She's a teenager at the time, and she's so talented. And yet we're sitting here, and she cannot come up with an idea. She can't follow an idea through. So I tried all these different things, and finally one day in the teaching studio, I said, "Lay down on the couch." So there's a couch in the studio. Lay down on the couch, and I just started playing soft music and so on. And I got her to kind of do like stream of consciousness and so on. And next thing you know, she started becoming more creative because she stopped trying. She stopped trying to do it with her thinking brain. So that's the answer. I don't know what
Well,
I can't give you the formula, but
though I loved it. Like this whole heart connection today has been amazing because I've actually learned so much. Because thank you for sharing that story about the student because I get that. And when you said that if you're writing from your ego, from yourself versus
yeah,
source, like that is so essential for me right now, because and that's what, you know, like my label is trying to exactly that. They're like, source, get, you know, I say to myself, get out of my head, get into my heart. Or so it's like when I get those downloads, I really like, I feel they're from superstores because I'm just like, I don't know, this is a thing, blah. And so, but when I try to write a song, sometimes it's just like, so thank you, Anthony, so much. You are such a gift to the universe, to the world. You know, you help so many people with your studio and at Unity as musical director. And I just, again, thank you for letting me record your song. And
Well,
hopefully
thank you.
will check out the YouTube video on YouTube. And yeah, so anyway, but I hope you have a rest of your amazing day this Sunday. And I was just going to say goodbye to everybody, and we'll see you next week.